spectators. Wow. Good evening. Welcome to the City of River Falls Municipal Utility Advisory Board meeting for Monday, May 20th. Can we have a roll call, please?
Richter.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Mashevsky.
Here.
Toom.
Here.
Spafford.
Here.
Wells Mangold.
Here.
Looking for approval of the minutes from the April 15th meeting.
Move approval of minutes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. Minutes are approved. And now is the time of our meeting for public comments. If anybody has anything, they can come up and sign in and speak. Anybody? Okay.
If there is none, I'd like to just, at this
Yeah.
point, I think it's going to be appropriate now just to welcome our new council liaison. Scott Morrison. If I did it at the end, it would seem kind of meaningless, you know, that you're already here. But Scott, welcome aboard,
Thank you.
and we're glad to have you.
Thanks. Looking forward to it.
Welcome. Moving on to the consent agenda, which is acknowledgement of the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids Facility Commission minutes from the 21st of March.
I move approval of consent agenda.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. Consent agenda is approved. Number 2 is new business, and that is pertaining to the resolution for the state legislative action on wastewater sludge hauling.
Presentation tonight. Ron Groth is here, our wastewater superintendent. And in the memo, you can see the picture in the lower right corner of that memo with the sludge hauling truck backed up to our new sludge storage facility. And Ron's going to talk a little bit about that. Ron, too, I had some questions before the meeting. Maybe just give a brief history about West Central Biosolids, how many employees they have, and how many communities. People, just a little context, and then move right into that. Can you do that? Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I think it was formed in '96 by 11 member communities, which River Falls was one of. Currently, the facility has 3 employees, and the trucking is done by an independent contractor called Porcupine Trucking. I think they've been hauling since '96. So, and right off the top of my head, I think they're treating about over 14 million gallons a year is about what's going through the facility. So
That's good. And then, too, I'm going to just tee this up for you, and you can weave it into your presentation. But you talked about the gallons. And then when you read these reports and read the memo, you see pounds and you see gallons and how stuff is measured. You might want to just briefly weave in why sometimes we refer to it in pounds and sometimes we refer to the sludge in gallons.
yeah, the gallons, basically, they use gallons when they haul it. So when the trucking firm hauls it, he uses gallons because that's, he's got so much capacity in his truck gallon-wise. So that's how they calculate that. When it gets to the facility, the treatment costs are actually in pounds. And the reason it's pounds is because the denser the sludge, the more solids in it, the more it costs to treat, the more end product you have, the less water you take out of it. So there's 2 different units of measurement. I know it's been kicked around, and these go way back, before any of our times, back to when the bylaws were established with billing in gallons for hauling. I know we've kicked around doing it just a per load cost, so 1 load is this much, but presently that's what it is. It's gallons for hauling.
I'm going to just tee this up for you now. The reason we're here tonight is, so since 1996, we've been hauling sludge with the trucks, and based on a permit that we classified the sludge as a certain type of product. And just past 6 months, one of the drivers was pulled over by State Patrol, and State Patrol, in his determination, was that really our permit is invalid. It doesn't describe the product accurately. And that kind of leads up to some other things. Is that accurate?
Right. I think the original, you can see some of that in your memo, but the original permit exemption, I guess you'd call it, was for scrap hauling. And that didn't apply. And there's been a recent development here, actually, since I did the memo. The firm, the Boardman Clark representing the Biosolids facility, met with the State Patrol captain. And they had a further clarification on what exactly our permit or the trucker's permit requires us or permits us to do. Now the State Patrol says they're fine with hauling 8,000 gallon loads of sludge in. So they came back into last week and said that. But any of the centrate, that's the water that's taken out of the solids that gets hauled back to the facilities, that still can only be 6,000, so it meets that 80,000 gallon weight limit. So on the face of it, it sounds pretty good. Well, we can still haul 8,000 gallons out, but it really doesn't do a lot of good because that trucker charges basically for one trip. So he brings, whether it's 8,000 or 6,000 of centrate, he's going to take the same amount of sludge, because if we haul more sludge than centrate he's hauling back, then we get into what's called, they term it as extra centrate. So all those loads that they have to haul extra centrate, that's $240 a load. So that cost would be astronomical in a hurry, because at 8,000 gallons, for every 3 loads of sludge you haul in, you generate an extra load of centrate. So it's kind of a lengthy discussion. I mean, there's a lot to it, but it benefits the trucker somewhat, because even if he's a little bit over on his gallons now, he doesn't have to worry about getting an overweight permit. So that it does help. So
does the whole controversy, Ron, really boil down to the subjective interpretation of the permit? Is that really where we're stuck at?
Somewhat. The way the State Patrol is viewing the product, I guess, what's being produced, but even the attorney, because we kind of argued that point, is it just a matter of proving to them that this would fall under the recycling statute? And the attorneys, they have quite a bit of experience in it. They didn't think there was any way they could present that case that the centrate would fall under the recycling standard. So,
and the impact to River Falls is between $30,000 and $40,000 a year in additional costs under the new interpretation of the permit.
Yeah, I think it was $33,000. If you look at last year's numbers of what we hauled, it would be $33,000 extra.
So where are we at with this today, Ron? I think we've looked at administratively, we've really looked at this in depth. Now it's more and more on the political aspect of this to see if we can change the state law. Is that really where we're at?
Right. I think currently what's going on is the lobbyist from Boardman and Clark is setting up meetings with Representative Zimmerman and Staff Schultz, and we'll try to get them, on our side, present a bill, basically to make this another exemption under the law, same as like a milk hauler, same as somebody hauling potatoes. There's a variety of them out there that have exemptions to that 80,000 gross vehicle weight limit. I know the State Patrol captain, he did, I guess, express some desire to see a change in the standard. He would like it to go with the same type of system they have in Michigan, where it actually goes by axle instead of gross vehicle weight. It's a per axle weight. So that allows Michigan, truckers with an extra axle to actually haul more weight. So,
I mean, one of the concerns, I guess, when you read this memo and for River Falls and other communities is it's additional expense for all these communities, including ours.
right.
But that money isn't really going towards safety, or it's not really going towards roads. It's not going towards anything except additional cost to the hauler. Is that accurate?
Pretty much, yeah. It's just increasing everybody's costs. It's, for the trucker, it's the cost of diesel, it's more man hours, it's all that stuff. So yeah, there's really no
Not
direct
going to the
benefit.
DOT, it's not going to the DNR, it's not.
Oh. No, I guess money, if he started violating his permit, then there'd be money going to the DOT for
Right
his
there.
fines, but yeah.
But it's just additional costs that these communities need to absorb through rates or other
Right.
cost recovery
Yeah.
mechanisms. And that's why we're asking you to take a look at this resolution today that's in front of you, to allow Ron to continue, the effort with the other communities and the attorney to try to have state law changed to get us back to square one.
Right. I think, that it's a show of support that all the member communities are behind this. They want to get something done. They're expressing their support. So I think that's where we are today. I mean, a lot of this is you know, we are already, we basically work with the biosolids and everything, but I guess we want to present it as, you know, one combined unit, so.
Yeah, and if folks have questions, I mean, Ron's here to answer questions, so. It gets kind of complicated, but boiling it down is really interpretation of the permit has changed recently, which has financial implications for us and other communities.
Well, I guess I don't know that much about the trucking industry, and I mean, I think they probably have limits for gross weight on the roads to, in some ways, to protect the roads. But, you know, I mean, you could have unlimited, well, not unlimited, but you could have trucks can haul a lot of weight if you want to put them on there. How does it compare to grain haulers or, you know, commodity haulers of any other sort that would be gravel, you know? I mean, I'm not sure what the difference is.
I can partly begin to answer that, maybe Ron can chime in. But I do know, in the springtime, for example, when the roads are thawing, there are weight restriction limits that we've always abided by and will continue to abide by because the road conditions can worsen quickly with the roads thawing out. So we abide by those for weight limits. But then I don't know how it compares to other loads. Ron, do you?
Yeah, different industries have different exemptions, and I don't know them all. I know milk haulers have an exemption. I know potato haulers were brought up that they have an exemption, that they can exceed that 80,000 pound weight limit. There's more out there. I'm not sure everyone who it is, but it's been more, and I think that's what the State Patrol didn't really like. It's more of a special interest type of thing. Every time somebody comes back to them, you know, looking for another exemption. But that's the way the law is in the state of Wisconsin right now, so.
So Ron, just to be clear, so we reduced the load size from 8,000 gallons to 6,000 to comply with the new rule or the revised rule of where we're at. Is this the DOT or is this the State Patrol interpreting the DOT's rule?
Yeah, I mean, basically, to this point, it's been the State Patrol. So, yeah, they're interpreting the statute, you know, the way they are. Because there's the 80,000 pound weight limit. That exemption that we had before for the overweight permit allowed that to go to 100,000 pounds. Well, that was the exemption they were using. It was called that scrap exemption, which they found out it's not, or the State Patrol is interpreting it not to be. So, yeah, I guess a short answer to the question is it's the State Patrol at this point.
So the DOT still is not got a problem with it? It's now the State Patrol interpreting it
Well, they're the
differently?
ones, I mean, I don't know to what extent how they interact, but the State Patrol does enforce those regulations, so.
So we've got a firm that Boardman and Clark. Who are they? It says they're a registered lobbyist. Who are they lobbying? The State Patrol or are they lobbying the DOT?
Well, at this point, they've been working with the State Patrol. That option has pretty much been expired. I think we're at the end point with that. Right now, it's going to be lobbying the state legislature to try to pass new legislation to give us an exemption for hauling municipal sludge and that return cent rate.
Which will then affect the DOT, I'm assuming at that point, correct?
Well, then, yeah, the state statute would get changed and,
Department of Transportation.
yeah, the interpretation would be right there. I mean, it'd be written in state law that we'd be allowed to haul cent rate wastewater. It probably would be termed at up to that 100,000 pound limit.
Okay, thank you.
I know that the dairy farmers were very good at lobbying the federal government, and that's how they got their exemption. And so that is that's definitely how it has to be done. You get the 80,000 pound limit, and if you want an exemption, and I don't know that this small community-driven solid waste is necessarily, like the size of
No.
of the dairy. So, a couple of questions that I have. I didn't quite understand the 11-member communities, and then there are non-member facilities. And how does this facility get their money? Is it from the sale of the solid waste? It's a Class A, is what I've heard, so it can be spread as fertilizer?
Right. Yeah, basically it's the user fees. So the member communities, there's an established treatment cost for pounds that you haul down there, and that's what they pay. And then the non-members, the people that weren't in it originally, that they treat their solids, they pay that cost and 10% additional. So
And then the use of the solid waste then, is there a profit there for the facility?
actually, there isn't. They're paying $5 a yard to get rid of it right now. So it's spread on agriculture on farm fields, but no, it's an additional cost. So.
I always found that interesting because I do think there potentially is some value. It's fertilizer, basically. Yeah, I think the facility, I always felt like there wasn't enough to go into the commercial market to bag it and sell it. And then there's always a fear they couldn't get rid of it, in which they need to do every year. So they do pay a small fee to even get rid of it, which, I mean, someone could argue it has value, but we pay to get rid of it, which is not overly efficient. And it's land applied now, Class A sludge. You could put it in your garden.
I know there's a current shortage of the Milorganite product. I think people are catching on that it's organic. It's Milwaukee's waste, and they made a business out of it.
And when I used to be on the board before Ron down there, I mean, I think that conversation has come a long ways. The impression of what that sludge used to be and how it was received by the public today compared to what it used to be has changed quite drastically. Now it's organic, organic fertilizer compared to the old days. It used to be, just perceived a lot more negatively.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I think it's, the end product right now, it's not a Milorganite type consistency. It would be hard to market the way it is. I mean, there's always ongoing, discussion about getting to that point where, it'd be a more marketable product than what it is, so. It's just the process that's used, it's called lime stabilization. It just results in kind of a denser, not the small pellets like Milorganite is. You couldn't spread it in a fertilizer spreader, so.
Ron, just so I'm clear, so we're paying to have this sludge moved to this facility.
Yes.
We're paying to have it processed also, or just to have it moved?
No, we pay for having it being trucked down there and for the treatment.
And for the treatment. And
And for the
then
treatment.
somebody comes in and the facility sells it to them for $5. I'm sorry. Somebody comes in and gets it and they pay them to take it?
Pay them $5 a yard to take it, correct, yes. Yeah.
But now, don't we, having some experience on other committees and stuff, don't we share at the end of the year in whatever the profits are of the organization? So we're in effect paying ourselves. In effect. I don't know that it's a dollar for dollar. I doubt we're getting a dollar for dollar back, but if we didn't send it there, we'd have to do something with it here, and it'd be a cost to us here.
No, I understand that.
So,
Right, I mean, last year, I think we just got that rebate check, and I can't remember now. It was, I remember last year was 11,000, maybe as high as 14,000 some years, and we're paying, it varies from year to year. But if you average it over the years, probably we're averaging about 325,000 a year. We're paying for the hauling and the treatment, so.
That did go down a little bit after we put our new sludge handling building in, correct?
The
That-
hauling costs, we actually dropped the loads a year by close to 80 loads after we put that building in. But now that'll bring that cost back up again with paying more per gallon, so.
So that was one of our frustrations. Those gains that we made, we're gonna be losing quite a few of those gains
Yeah.
that we made.
I guess, yeah, look at it, could be worse if we didn't reduce the amount of gallons, we'd be paying even more than we are, so.
But back to Kevin's point, back when this was established in 96, somebody was doing the math and figuring out what it would cost your community to build a facility to treat this versus having one facility where you could share the costs. And whether or not that's holding true or not, I think in the next probably 8 to 12 months, we're probably going to do a little more in-depth look at current costs and potential future costs. So we're going to be taking a closer look on that and reporting back to you exactly what those costs are and maybe some alternatives. So you can be looking for that. So we want to dig a little deeper too. I mean, we've been going off these assumptions for a long time, and it's been working. It's very expensive, and we're saying, geez, is this the right, way to do this?
Do we get any type of a break on weight? I know Minnesota does. They allow an extra 10% over the winter months. That's another option too. I don't know if Wisconsin allows that or not.
No, they basically were, the way it was, they were at 100,000 pounds year-round except for when those spring road restrictions would go on. Then even if you had 100,000 pound weight permit, it would drop down to 80. So that usually went from mid-March to beginning of May. So they would have to haul 6,000 gallon loads for that period. So.
And just finally, the resolution that's in front of you today, really what it's doing is it's allowing Ron to continue having this conversation to look out for the best interest of our facility and our community, to have rules and laws written to, help be most beneficial to us. I mean, that's kind of a summary of what that is. When it's really non-binding, but it's saying Ron can go ahead and keep working with the attorney and lobbyist to have rules in place that'll benefit River Falls.
Kevin, do you have any idea how many other facilities across the state are like this? I mean, this can't be an isolated incident, is it?
Well, Ron and I have had this conversation. There might be a couple, Ron, but
I don't know of any. You have places like, say, Madison, Metropolitan, where the waste comes in by pipes and everything is centralized at their facility. It's not trucked in. So, but there's custom waste hauled and things like that, but I don't know that anybody's doing it on the kind of scale with municipal plants actually transporting their solids. You get to a point where even an individual plant will have, say it's spring and they want to get on farmers' fields, they want to haul a lot in a hurry to get it out to the fields. So then if they're hauling 6% liquid or something out to those fields, they could have a similar situation where, they might run into this, where it would be nice for them to haul larger loads also.
But a consortium like this, and this is what the conversation is, it's pretty unique. And it's amazing other communities haven't done what we've done, but that might say something about the consortium that it's not the best potentially way to do things, right? Why isn't it being copied?
Yeah, it is, when you're trucking this product back and forth, you're hauling liquid back and forth, it's gonna cost more that way. It has to. So you have shared facilities, which I think was the idea initially, sharing a facility that all these communities could use, so.
At some point in 1996 or before that, when they were putting this together, there were leaders who thought this was a great idea. And maybe it's, after we analyze it, maybe it still is the best idea out there. But it's fairly unique, believe it or not.
Hudson, New Richmond, Baldwin, Prescott, what are they doing? They part of this, or?
They're part of it. All those communities are part of it. Hudson is, Baldwin, New Richmond, Osceola, Amory, Ellsworth. They're all part of this, Spring Valley. So.
In all of their, so I think I'm going to say this correctly, but if I'm wrong a little bit, please correct me. I believe all of their boards or commissions have endorsed this as well. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yep, they have.
We're the last ones that haven't, so. And we haven't, just because I know sometimes our policymakers here don't like to jump in front of this stuff too much, so we came at this pretty cautiously I think we know where your heart is with it, but to do these formal steps, sometimes a little more difficult for our policymakers, but Ron and I we felt pretty strongly that this one was important enough to get in front of you. To A, recognize the issue at hand, and B, Ron's looking for support to go ahead and continue doing his job to look out for the interest of our facility.
It's a head scratcher that all of a sudden, after all this time, it's become an issue.
Big head scratcher. Everybody was surprised.
Yeah, I think it had never been asked before. Believe it or not, these trucks had never been pulled over and scaled. This is the first time it had, and they didn't even scale them. They just basically started questioning what you're doing, what you're hauling, and then it all kind of evolved into where we're at today. So they always had applied for that permit under that same statute, got the permit, and it was almost like nobody followed up or what happened, I don't know. But yeah, it wasn't until January when they finally dug a little deeper. So, just one clarification, Mark, on your point about there might be an exemption for winter limits. I guess it just never came into effect for us because those trucks can only haul 8,000, so they wouldn't exceed that 100. But I was thinking about it. I think there is something like that.
I know you could go
Yeah.
from 80 to 88,000 during the winter. Is I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
if you had to go back to the legal load.
Yeah. So there might be something like that. It just never came into play. So.
Ron, I don't know if this is a fair question for you, but based on our notes here, I'm assuming the Wisconsin DOT, whoever, sets these 80,000 pound limits based on the roads, the bridges. I believe it's the length of the vehicle and how much they support over the area that they're sitting on.
Called the bridge law.
The bridge laws,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So if we're exceeding that and asking for an exemption to go higher, is there any liability to the city? If something would happen on one of those loads
Yeah.
going to this facility, if we're messing with the 80,000 pound rule or higher? Is that, I don't know if you can answer that question, but that's my concern, I
I
guess.
might be refer that to the attorney.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it is a private hauler, in a circumstance where he was hauling overweight and we didn't know about it. I don't know how that would play out either. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. It is, that, basically there's other things in the statute that is permissible to do. It depends who the hauler is, what they're hauling. Like we said, milk haulers, they're allowed to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know how that would play out.
I think these vehicles are registered for 97,000 pounds. So it's a 5-axle. It's the amount of footprint that the tires have and the length. So they're registered and they're not going to exceed a limit that's on a bridge. So they actually register their vehicle if they modify it or change it. So they're legal in a sense that they can haul that weight and it's okay. But it's not a legal load. So then you got to go to that next step for the exemptions.
And I think it is, isn't it? It is the wear and tear on the roads is basically why they have those
Yeah.
limits.
Yeah.
And there's lots of companies and groups out there that get exemptions. So I think you have a really good case here for 21 years of doing this. And, if you can get your representatives on board, so I would be for this, so.
Got more set. This is what you've been missing all these years.
I've gotten it, it's just come in a different form.
You get it after us.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, looking for a motion to approve resolution approving legislative action.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the resolution for legislative action.
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Moving on to reports, we have the Biosolids sludge hauling update report. Is that what we just
I think that's what that
got
was.
put in there?
Yeah, we
Okay.
just, we doubled it up, so
Sure.
that's what that was, so. Unless you have anything else to add, Ron? That horse is dead? Okay.
All right. Kevin, do you want to handle the next ones then?
Yeah, finance
Okay.
report. Sarah Carlson had emergency tonight, so I'm here to give her finance report in front of you. Electric fund year-to-date revenues are $4.4 million. Year-to-date expenses are about $4.4 million. Cash and investment reserves total $5.09 million. Hydraulic expenses continue to increase as TRC moves forward with the hydraulic relicensing. As you know, the 5-year relicensing process, a lot of that is funded out of that fund for the hydros. Transfer to other funds have increased due to absorbing 50% of the personnel fee for economic. Now, that one that's dotted there, that's the third bullet point. I talked to Sarah right before I came down to the meeting, and she said she misunderstood that, and that has not yet happened. So the 50-50 funding from our fund to economic development, that has not happened yet. There's been some discussion around that when they hire the new economic development coordinator, that we may fund some of that out of the electric utility fund or the utility fund for the reasons of, we do strongly believe as a utility that utilities do benefit greatly from new economic development. And then we were tossing around some ideas that maybe the utility would fund a portion of that position. She said she inadvertently put that in there, and that was not yet happened, but it's only been discussed. So, but the reasoning is economic development does help the utility in the end. Year-to-date kilowatt-hour purchases are 42,683,000, plus the hydro generation adds another 497,883, aggregating a total of 33,499,561 kilowatt hours. And this year-to-date sales of 43,129,836. Water fund year-to-date revenues 627,991. Expenses 639,310. You can see there it is slightly upside down, but as I always say this time of the year, the water revenues are yet to come. Wait for June, July, and August.
Water those yards and wash those cars.
Right? There you go. A reserve, 2.2 million in reserves there. Expenditures year over year remain stagnant at about 630,000. Next bullet, impact fee collections have almost doubled. So what do you say? Well, we had some property annexations, which we were able to collect some impact fees on. It was kind of nice. And year-to-date sales, 101.8 million gallons, an increase of 1.5 million gallons compared to last year. So somebody's taking longer showers. Sewer funds continues to do well. Year-to-date revenues, $1,211,089. Expenses, $861,000. Cash and investment reserves total $4.2 million. And I just want to keep reiterating for sewer. We were saving for a rainy day. We have big expenses coming up for the North Interceptor project, land acquisitions, sewer replacement. We continue to make upgrades at the plant. So we have big expenditures coming. And this is why we're collecting the money to keep our infrastructure up to date, intact, and there's stuff on the horizon. So we're not just collecting money to collect money. We have projects coming, and they're expensive ones. Stormwater fund, year-to-date revenues, $198,212. Year-to-date expenses, $155,640. Cash investments in total, $560,231 for the stormwater fund. That's my finance report. Things are well. We'll be on a conference call tomorrow morning with WPPI Energy and Sarah Carlson to discuss our cost of service study for electric, and that's probably continue to move ahead to a possible rate case later this year, so I'll give you another forewarning on that. So that's what I have for the finance report.
Okay.
Adam?
Moving on to the utility dashboards. If anybody has any questions there at all.
I don't have a lot to add. Interesting, and you see the outage picture from April 11th. So Dan Treichel shared this with me, and I think you'll find it interesting. So that pole line, you can see there, those poles there are fairly new. We were going to put, Dan said we were going to put that pole line on the other side of that alley about 6 years ago. But there was a customer who didn't want to remove a big pine tree that he really liked. So we put the line where it shows in the picture, and the tree that didn't want to be removed actually is the one that fell on the power line.
Send him a bill.
So we should have stuck with our guns on that one, maybe. Karma, I guess they call that, huh? I don't know.
And
Other than that, I don't have a lot to add. I mean, the guys are, I was trying to describe our teams in electric, water, and wastewater. A lot of times, if you think of a football analogy, you try to field 7 good guys out of 11, and you kind of fill in the other 4 and kind of hope. And sometimes you get a Super Bowl team with 10 out of 11 good guys or 11 out of 11. I think we've got a Super Bowl team in our utilities. Our employees are knowledgeable, their heart is in it, they're helpful, they're smart, they're easy to work with. We've got a great team, and we're kind of in a sweet spot right now, so hopefully I'm not jinxing that, but we have a great bunch of guys in electric, water, and wastewater right now, and they're all working hard.
Great.
And I trust them, and they're doing a great job, so.
Great. Moving on to announcements.
Yeah, I have a couple announcements. One, speaking of doing a great job, we have Logan Snyder here tonight. I'm going to present to him an accomplishment. But before I get to that, this morning I'm checking my emails, and I had a voicemail from yesterday. We had a power outage on River Ridge Road just a couple days ago, and 2 days ago. And Paul Bubak, B-U-B-A-K, called me, and he just said, hey, I want to give a shout out to Luke and Logan. Logan Snyder is here tonight. He said, not only do they do a great job, or are they courteous, hardworking. He said, I tried to offer them a gratuity, and they said, nope, we just can't do that at the city. That's not how we operate. And he said he took his hat off to that. Now they're making great decisions, so I'm not sure what he offered you, but you guys turned that down. That's also a pretty big deal. So, it was a great voicemail, and just wanted to say, great job, Logan, and you can pass that along to Luke, too. Luke is our second-year apprentice. So with that, I think in this time, Logan Snyder, he just accomplished his 4-year journeyman certificate, and I want to take you up front, Logan, and come on up here and give you this. So you can come right here. Okay. So Logan, I just want to say, when we hired you, we knew we had a good person in Logan Snyder. 4 years later, like within the last month, you passed your 4-day journeyman's, 4-year journeyman's test. How many days did it take you to complete that final test? 4 days. So it's a 4-day test. Final, other thing you had to do, the classes you had to take just to finish it all up. But it's a pretty rigorous 4-year apprenticeship. And Logan Snyder, I just want to present you with this. We're proud to have you as our newest lineman in the city of River Plains. Thank you.
You want to flip it around?
I'll flip this way. All right. Let me go into this. We'll just do this official.
Would you like
This here.
Wayne, come on, Wayne. Get up.
Yeah, Wayne, why aren't you in there?
Yeah, Wayne.
Wayne, come on up. This is also a great.
Took his hat off. Might as well get it in there.
Supervisor. He comes on his day off, he comes down to support
Oh,
his team.
nice.
There you go.
I feel like I'm photobombing this deal here. So.
Stand up.
Congratulations, man. We're glad to have you. With that, Adam, I don't think I have any other further announcements tonight.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? All right. For a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. We are adjourned.